Yeah, it's on its way. That's been part of my problem now. This I've got, I teach online, so this is the end of the semester and beginning of new semester. Just just this week, this week
Intercession,
and
yeah.
this week
Oh,
and next week. So that's pretty nuts because I have quite a few classes. And
what are you teaching this semester?
um, this semester I was teaching screenwriting, master's level course, a third world cinema course, a capstone exams course, comp exams for master's level, and then a couple of introduction to film courses for undergrads,
Well, that's a lot, isn't it?
and, and another kind of introduction to film course for another school. So yeah, pretty busy.
Yes, you sound like a professor I'd want to take third world cinema class. I would sign up for that in a heartbeat.
It's I like that class, and they seem to enjoy it quite a bit and get quite a bit out of it.
No, by third world, you mean countries that did not support either the American capitalists and not the Soviet
Well,
Union, right?
it's actually an outdated term, and part of what we do in the course, we call it third cinema as opposed to third world cinema.
Mm.
But part of what we do in the class is try to discuss and redefine, that sort of thing itself, because initially it did mean from third world countries, but the definition of third world countries, it's changed quite a bit,
Since
Um,
1989, right? As soon as that wall fell down, as soon
yeah,
as
I
the
mean,
Soviet Union stopped existing.
first world was always considered the the West, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And in more recent times, the more democratic West, Europe and the U.S. But that would also include Australia, New Zealand, and even like Israel to a certain extent is not considered a third world country, which is weird. But and then the second world was Soviet and communist,
Eastern Bloc.
right? Which might be just as advanced in infrastructure, economics, finance, everything else. Um, but was that, and then but that all has changed too. I mean, there's a lot of capitalism going on in the Soviet bloc, of course, and even in China at this point, right? And can we, then there's, can we really be calling uh, India, in a broad generalized term, or China, third world countries anymore? You know, so all of that gets pretty
Well, I
murky.
mean, India, you would have considered a first world country back in the day because they were, yeah,
Oh, when they were under the control of, but they
of the
never
British
got to
Empire.
vote. They were basically just under control
Yeah.
of
I
England.
mean, I don't know. The term has definitely been bastardized, right? I mean, it's been taken from what it was intended to mean something incredibly different now.
Yeah,
Now we kind
yeah,
of
and
say it's a poor
it's
country
even
that nobody
considered
wants to
kind of
live
a
in.
derogatory term at this
Yeah,
point.
it's a derogatory term. It's
So
rude.
it's
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 inconsiderate.
it's something we have to think about. And then we've got what's emerging as kind of a fourth cinema, which is indigenous peoples of their own countries and own
Oh, that's interesting.
making their own films, right?
I
Like
live up here in
like
New York, in Manhattan. There is a museum dedicated to the Native Americans, and right now they have a video exhibition.
oh,
It's a
okay,
bunch of
cool.
videos and all that good stuff, basically made by Native Americans, and it's really fascinating because it's not movies; it's really just images playing over and over again. But it's
Right,
quite
right.
fascinating.
And but they are making movies, but by the old definitions, that would be, even Native Americans making films would be first world because it's in the United States, right?
Yeah,
And
uh-huh.
it's in the
It's hard.
West,
It's
but
hard to classify that because they are very. They did not have a very good life in this country. So to
right.
call it first world cinema is not giving
It
it
gets
justice.
even more complex, because are you making are because third cinema originally, coming out of Latin America, a lot of it originally, and Egypt, um, was very political, and that was the whole point of it. But as the countries grew, they started making a lot of like really um, very commercial films too. China,
Hmm.
Hong Kong, India, so there's your it's just as complex as the art cinema, the political cinema, the truly just commercial cinema. Yeah, it gets pretty complicated.
There are reams and reams of publications about it as a subject. It
Oh
really
yeah.
is. It
Oh
really
yeah.
is fascinating. I mean, we know from our previous conversation that you have a history in cinema, and I know I probably asked you then, but I'm curious now, why you decided to write a novel and speculative fiction as opposed
Oh,
to.
I always wanted to do that. um and quite honestly, filmmaking, screenwriting, writing fantasy books, it's pretty similar stuff. um Creatively, I mean, there are authors who start in one and move to the other pretty often, or that do both. I mean, I know
Mhm.
authors who write a novel and a screenplay to go along with it.
Are you one of those
Same
authors?
time. No, I don't do that,
No.
or I haven't. And honestly, if a miracle were to happen and Paternus were to get picked up, um, to be made into a film or TV, I actually wouldn't want to mess with the screenplay myself. Maybe have some say in it if I could, but I'd rather not write it myself. Even though I've written quite a few, I know what strengths they have, um, and I'd rather I know that and I actually had a little bit of communication with Pierce Brown, and it just reinforced everything I already know. That was pretty hellish for him. He got paid a shitload of money to write the screenplays for the Red Rising trilogy that's being
Oh
made
yeah.
into the huge Hollywood films. Um, and it was a pretty hellish process for him. It's nice to have the money, but I'd almost rather just not.
What made it so bad?
uh, well, you can't do what you want.
No,
Um,
of course not.
you've got a committee that's constantly wanting this and that added and rewritten, and very often they bring in other writers, even uncredited, to change what you've done, and then there's your name up there on it, but it really might not be a script that you really wanted. But you don't want to. There are a few people that will say something, like, oh, they did a terrible job, but that generally always guarantees it will flop, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, it really is. The
Because
more
all the
cooks in the
fans
kitchen.
that get behind him are like, well, I'm not
Yeah.
going to go see it then. So
Well, well,
you
then I
don't
mean,
want to
there's
do
more or
that.
less those critics will come out with a horrible aggregate score or something along those lines. And
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, you want a quality film, and more than one person's writing it. Typically, it's not going to be that good. But man, a lot of these blockbusters are written by a team of people.
Oh yeah, most of
Well,
them.
yeah. Um,
And
are you?
even the ones where there's only one credited, that's often the case.
Yeah, there's secret stuff going on behind the scenes.
Oh yeah.
People are manipulating this, but according to the guild rules, only one person's name can go on it because he wrote 50.8% of it or something along those lines.
There are all kinds of weird guild guidelines for that too. But even with those, there are sneaky things that go on.
I mean, in terms of politics, writing a novel is a lot easier. I mean, just
Yeah,
getting
well, I
it
mean,
out into the
writing a
world
screen,
to be
it depends on what kind of screenplay you're writing, because um, there's the spec script, which you just write on your own. You write that
Mhm.
the way you want it to be. That's it. And then hopefully it either gets you an agent and gets a sale, or at least gets you an agent, right?
Yeah.
Then they'll find out that this studio or this production company needs a screenwriter, and you'll go in and pitch, and then you do it for hire, and that's a very different process, because
Have you ever pitched
then
a
you're
script
dealing
that you
then
wrote?
you're dealing with the committee, right?
Have you ever pitched a script that you wrote?
Yeah, quite a few times. That's
Wow.
what I
How,
that's a lot of what I did when I lived in LA.
how big was the room?
What's that?
How big was the room?
Uh Normally the biggest pitch I ever did was just like 3 people, I believe.
Still intimidating though. I mean, they're staring at you, and you've got to tell them a story.
Yeah, well,
Good story.
I had been, I had been producing commercials and dealt with and actually working in the film business, and acting already, for a while professionally. So it wasn't that bad for me just because I had I've had those kind of meetings. I had a lot of those kind of meetings before, so it wasn't a big deal. Now, when I say pitch, I never pitched to try to be a screenwriter on a project. So when I went into the room, my screenplay had already been read. So I can't actually say that I have pitched. I'll take that back. Not
I
in
mean,
that not
it's
in
not like
that
a chicken or
setting.
the egg thing, isn't it? I mean, don't they have to read your script before they invite you into the room?
Uh, it depends. I mean, if you wrote if you have an agent, um, they may never have read another script that you did. Um, but they take the agent's word for it, and you'll go in and say, okay, here's what you want done. You either want this novel, turned into a screenplay, or you've got an idea that you want turned into a screenplay. um, what do you think is the way to go about it? And then you tell them that. So that's your pitch.
That's
But I
interesting.
never,
I
I
mean,
never, I never did those kind of pitches. Friends of
Hollywood
mine,
is definitely
friends
a
of mine.
place where you would want an agent, right? Hollywood is a very agent intensive town.
Yep.
But when you sit in front of your computer and you're writing Paternus and you turn that last page over and it's a finished novel, at that point, you don't really need an agent to get that to a successful place in the literary market,
Well,
do
not
you?
anymore,
Yeah.
because of the self-publishing, the way that self-publishing has grown. And it depends on what you want. If you want your book in bookstores, you still need an agent and a publisher. Uh,
And was that your intention when you finished writing the first novel? Did you want to be an independent publisher, or had you gone through kind of the hoops to get it traditionally published?
no, I never went through the query process. I did that a lot in Los Angeles with screenplays. And I also, but I even without an agent, I got screenplays read, by some good companies, just through contacts. And and I actually did I did a proposal for a TV series that got picked up, uh, tentatively by American Zoetrope, Francis Ford Coppola's company. But it ended up getting turned down by Canadian financier
Oh, no
company,
kidding.
which is normal. But I had my scripts read by, Scott Free, Ridley and Tony's company when Tony was still alive, and by New Line Cinema. So, and and
Oh, yeah, we talked about Tony Scott, didn't we, last time?
yeah, I
How
think
your
maybe
connection
we
to
did.
Hollywood.
Now,
That's very interesting. I mean, you've gone from,
I can't believe this is your 100th episode, man.
yeah, 100, 100,
That's
100. I
amazing.
can't believe it. You're my 99th recording,
Oh, cool.
but you're going to be my 100th episode. I'll hold somebody back.
Awesome.
I'll hold you back one episode. Yeah, I remember. I mean, it was so fascinating. It was so nice of you and kind of you to be my first guest to begin with. I mean,
I
you're the
can't
one that kind of
believe that I was your first, and that
you're my
now
first.
you've done 100. You've been busy.
It's very interesting because I mean, if you had said no then, I don't know if this project would have gone anywhere. Right? You need people to say yes, and you
Yeah.
need somebody to be willing to deal with some headaches and be number one.
Well, you've done a
And you
lot of
did,
great folks.
folks.
You've done a lot of great people with the
Yeah, right. I've had some really
yeah, yeah,
great conversations.
yeah.
And I mean, that's the best part is I've had conversations with independents who've been successful and award winning, and I've had conversations with people who are very hopeful to write a story.
Right.
And it's just been a great way to engage with artists and find out where they are in their career, what they hope and what they dream and what
Right.
they know. I mean, everybody knows a little crack of something somebody else doesn't know anything about. So, right? I
Yeah, well,
mean,
yeah,
you
and
are.
and every book has a different route. There is no one route. Because
I mean,
I
when
know
I talked to
guys,
you
I
last
know
year,
people, I
I
know
had
people.
published a novel on Amazon because I wasn't an agent, right? I had no clue what I was doing. I was doing research. People were saying to do this, that, and the other thing, and I was not doing any of it because it felt so wrong.
Right,
But the conversation that I have with you and other people, plus the other podcast, I've been able to kind of figure it out. That it takes a lot of confidence to say this thing's going independent,
right.
right?
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, you're making a choice, and you've got to deal with that choice.
right, right. And
There's no coming back from it.
yeah, I just
Because I
did.
mean, another thing that I've been doing is sending a lot of fiction out to magazines and things and having conversations with editors and getting published that way. And what I've learned is they do not want stuff that's been out in the world at all. You put it on
Yeah,
your
it's
blog, you put it on your Patreon, it's done.
well, things have changed quite a bit. I mean, just a few years ago, an agent or a publisher wouldn't touch you if you had ever self-published anything. And they
Anything. Wow.
definitely, absolutely wouldn't touch something that had already been self-published. But that has obviously changed tremendously, right? And you've got
What would be an example of somebody who's gone independent from independent to traditional?
Jonathan French, with
Oh,
his
he's a great example,
with
actually, and
his
a
with
really
his Gray
cool guy.
Bastards. I mean, that had been out a
Yeah.
while and hadn't really gotten any attention until the SPFBO, and next thing you know, he's getting a
Boom.
call.
That same contest, you got second place,
Yeah, I
right?
got third,
Third
and
place.
because second was Phil Tucker, and Phil has been approached, but he didn't do it because of he was in the middle of a series and he wanted to get him out in a certain time frame. And he was making a certain amount of money that they couldn't really make worthwhile for him. But he still would love to. I know that he would still love to do hybrid publishing. So have something uh, trad pubbed, but still do his. I mean, he writes books so quickly, a trad pub
See,
can't keep up,
I
right?
think that's the thing right there.
And there are a
For
ton of
somebody
these
who can
guys.
punt,
I mean, and
yeah, right.
and
You can churn, right?
Josiah Bancroft had gone self pub, right? And
And then
then
he can churn.
then got picked up.
There's a guy, his name is Garrett Robinson. I had the privilege of talking to him too. And his idea, if you want to be a successful um, independent publisher, you churn
Yeah,
publications.
different ways that people do it, and there are people that make a fortune just churning these things out. And then there are people that do extremely well, putting out one every 6 months or a year. So
Let me ask you
yeah,
one quick question.
that
Do
can work, but it only works if people want to actually read it. But I
yes,
mean, I
right?
know that there are people who want to, who authors who like to, write 5 or 6 books and then publish them all 1 month apart. And some of them will crank out 5, 6, 10 novels a year.
I think
Um,
you made a great point with the do people want to read them, because I think you can get yourself stuck writing this is going to be my series,
right.
and then I have to ask, okay, what makes you think that anybody wants to read a book two of something they didn't read a book one of? Right? I mean, is that an appropriate thought to have, or do you
Well,
think
no,
that?
it is, but a lot of these people that do this kind of built a little more slowly, or they got lucky and their first series took off. Um, and a lot of them that are making a ton of money that way already have a name established. They already have
Yeah,
an audience. So churning them out just makes them more and more money, and it keeps their audience in tune. But it just depends on what you want out of your life. I mean, there are, and how good can your work really be if you're writing 10 novels a year?
yeah,
Um,
a month. I mean, 40,000 words a month. I mean, that's just absolutely insane. Or
Yeah, well,
depending. I
a
mean,
lot of
depending
these
on
are very short, but some of them are pretty damn long. I mean, Aileron Kong, that guy blows me away. I mean, he writes huge books and he just cranks them out. He doesn't crank them out quite that fast, but he cranks them out. And there are a lot of these people like him, that nobody in the industry has heard about. They just don't know who those people are. and yet he's making, $100,000 a month. And I know the trad pub folks love. I know that a lot of the trad authors love to say, "Oh no, poo poo, that's not real numbers." Well, they are real numbers. You can't say they aren't when they are. These
I mean,
people are
you
making
can
that.
spend those real numbers. I mean,
These are real numbers that are totally backed up. But
I mean that's at least
it's
100,000 readers if he's
it's
only charging
amazing.
nine.
It's amazing the blinders that a lot of trad folks will put on to
Well,
the
you want to.
reality of it.
It's
And
kind of
honestly,
like it's an investment,
too,
isn't it?
that's
You have an
fine. You can stay
idea.
out of it.
You have an idea of how something's supposed to work, and then somebody comes along and says, "Nope, this is going to work a different way now." They're
Yeah.
fighting their tooth and nail basically to keep independent publishing from working for people. Because honestly, it's a question of why am I going to pay you all this money to do all this stuff that other people can do for them, I can do for myself, or it doesn't need to be done. Period. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know. At the same
Well,
time,
it
because
just depends on again, it depends on what you want. I mean, there are a lot of people that are publishing traditionally that do it just because they want a lot of money, so they crank these things out and they don't care if it's crap, or offensive, and badly written and unedited and unproofed. They don't care because they're making a ton of money, right? And believe it or not, the vast majority of readers are not reviewers. They're not, publishing editors.
no, they want an entertaining
They
story
just
that's
they
going to pull
just
them
read,
through.
and they will read enormous amounts of crap.
And you know
And
what
there's
they
nothing,
won't
and
do
there's
is read
nothing.
something that they're not going to read something that's not engaging. They're not going
Yeah,
to read something that's not working for them.
it's engaging in one way, but it still can be garbage.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean, look back.
you look at half the films and
Yeah.
half the books that do real well, are
Well, my
just
favorite example
generally
is
not maybe not
2
that
years
great.
ago. Remember when the election was happening? Donald Trump got a book written about him that was published on Amazon, where the character Donald Trump had an affair with a bellboy character, and it made millions. It made millions of dollars for this dude overnight who wrote it drunk, published it, and he's like, "Dude, guys, come on, this is rough. Half the words are misspelled." But he's a millionaire now.
No, yeah,
He's a millionaire now.
yeah. The reality, a lot of the trad authors are people want. I can't say a lot of the trad authors. A lot of the people that are traditionally published want to believe that they have been peer reviewed and they've gone through the gatekeepers, so they deserve something. I don't know what it is. Um, and That's fine. It just depends on what you want. If that's what they want, that's fine. If people want to self pub, you know, crappy, quick written stuff, and make a ton of money, if they're making a ton of money, more power to them. I mean, that's just the realities of the world, and I have no problem. I just know what
No,
I like to do and what I want to do. So,
well, you take your time. How long did it take for the second book to get published or written, finished?
well, the second one didn't take me nearly as the first one took me 3.5, nearly 4 years, just because it was my first one and I was rewriting quite a bit and getting reader notes and rewriting. This one I did. This one came out May 1st
May
of
1st.
in 2016, so 2 years
Uh-huh.
ago, almost exactly. So it'll be a little over 2 years when book two comes out on July 10th. But I wrote it in less time than that because that first year was mostly just a whirlwind of keeping up with marketing and I would write and take notes a little bit every day, but I was never actually cranking down words. Um, so this one I've written for the. I mean, I've got to say that there were a whole lot of notes taken and a lot of outlining and re-outlining done before I was really cranking out words. But I started really writing last November. So under a pretty tight schedule for me, because I don't write that fast. I like to get about 1,200 words a day. So I was
Good
able to
pace.
get that done. And this one's longer than the first book. And I've gotten better at it. So,
Well,
uh,
you also let it stew for 18 months.
yeah, and I thought about it a lot. And
Yeah,
of
a
course,
lot.
I took a whole lot of notes and outlined and re outlined and tried a few things. but the actual real writing took place November, December, January, February.
Yeah.
Over about 5.5 months.
One of my main thoughts over the last year has been about small publishers.
Yeah,
Small publishers are an incredibly interesting animal because it seems like almost a commune of authors that get together and work with each other and other artists to develop a success. Do they normally? I mean, they're guys that kind of have a full-time job, right?
yeah. I don't
Normally.
know. I really don't know anything. Very little. I know some people that are involved in them, but
Yeah.
I don't know anything really about it. Um, I don't understand. I guess I don't quite understand the appeal of it.
And
Because
the way, I mean, it
as
just, it
far
seems
as I'm
like,
concerned, if I wanted to go trad pub, I want somebody with the clout. And the small pubs just don't have that. They can't get books on a stand in front of Barnes and Noble. Um, they
I'm
can't,
still conflicted whether or not that's actually something that you want. Do you
but
want
I
to be
don't know. So I mean, they can get the books into bookstores. So there's that, absolutely. So I don't know. I have nothing against them at
Mhm.
all. I don't know. I know that their advances are a lot smaller. Um, there are some publishing companies that started real small that have done some amazing stuff and launched some really great authors. Um,
Right? I mean, it's really interesting because Virginia Woolf's husband was running a small press when she was writing a lot of her good stuff. She was
oh,
not,
really? Yeah. Of
right? I mean, that's
course,
one of
that
the
was a
things.
totally different world back then.
Different world, 100%. And like today, we are living in a world where you can get by with 20,000 fans. You know what I mean? You can
You're
get by
right.
with people that are willing enough to give you $1 a month to survive and continue to
Well, yeah,
write.
and, now we've got Patreons and audiobooks, and all these other ways to make money and Kickstarters and to get things going. It's pretty amazing.
It almost feels like the novel or the work itself is supposed to be given away for free. Give here, you can have this, just give me something in return. Because people do not want to buy anything, I don't think.
Well,
Like people
there
do not
I
want to
don't
buy,
know
they'll
a
look
whole
for
lot
it.
about the story, but who's the guy who wrote Worm? Um, it's this, you know what I'm talking about?
No,
It's
tell me
this
about it.
enormous long story that he just posted for free. Um, for ages and ages, and he just makes his money off of donations and Patreon and stuff like that. I think maybe recently he's sold some rights, but yeah, he never actually sold any of it.
Yeah, I'm looking at his website now. It's very interesting. Let me ask you a quick question. Do I sound okay to you? I'm not roboting or anything, am I?
No, no,
Oh, okay.
no, actually, no, you're not. Yeah, no, it sounds very clear.
Oh, great. I went just another experience I had this year. I had a whole podcast with a really nice guy in Colorado. And after it was over with, he said to me, man, the entire time we were talking, you're really hard to understand. You were garbled, roboting or something. And I was like, I had to waste that podcast. I couldn't even use it.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah.
No, your audio is
Yeah.
perfect.
Perfect. Excellent. Yeah. Worm, a complete web serial. It's
Yeah,
freaking interesting.
yeah, and he gave that
And
away for
and I want to give my stuff away too. Everything I write every single month, I want to put on my website, but I can't do it.
yeah,
I mean, it's like you have a choice. You
yeah,
have a choice between getting it at spreading out,
yeah,
getting underneath people's eyes and letting them experience your work. You don't know who you are, or being selfish and keeping it all to yourself. And, it's hard to break out of nobody into somebody if you don't let people see your stuff
right,
that matter.
absolutely.
But see, that's my problem with independent publishing too. Because I mean, you need those other people to see your stuff. And if you do it yourself, I mean, I think you've been quite successful at this. And I would like
I
to
got
ask
really
how.
lucky. I got really lucky. The
How
way
did you get lucky? And what?
like I said, there are a ton of these guys that never got in the SBFBO and got to meet all the amazing reviewers and authors and stuff that I got, who are making a hell of a lot more money than I am. Right? And but it depends on what it's all about.
Mm,
And but mine is kind of a strange book, you know. And the guys I'm talking about, or women I'm talking about, they write in, pretty known, easily recognizable genres. It's either
Mm.
glowy hand, you know what I mean? It's either the very easily recognizable glowy hand urban fantasy, demon hunting wizard, male or female kind of thing. It's PNR, some in
What's
romance, or
what's
it's
PNR?
paranormal romance.
Paranormal romance, right? People want
Yeah,
romance.
or it's
You
or
put
it's
romance in your in your description, you're getting sold.
yeah,
Somebody's buying your
or
stuff.
or it's traditional epic fantasy, right?
Yeah.
Or traditional sci-fi. So, those are easily recognizable things. My book is not. It's not easily recognizable as any of those things, because it isn't really. It's urban fantasy, more in the vein of American Gods, but how many more of those can you name? There just aren't very many. Maybe Library at Mount Char, but there aren't a lot of books that are like that. Though mine has more of the sensibility of maybe the glowy hand, you know, with the
Your
snarky, with
story
the snarky,
is
snarky characters and the big action.
your story is gods coming to Earth, humans interacting with gods.
Yeah, but it's a lot of it is the type of characters and tropes that you use and don't use, as opposed to just the basic subject matter, right? Because you could explain, uh, well, I mean that they are on Earth, right? You could say the same thing about American Gods, but they're very, very different books. Or Library About Char, but those
Well,
are
that's the thing, though,
three
isn't it? I mean,
extremely different.
you could have a concept that's going to be similar to something that's been written 100 times, but
Right.
your take on it's going to be unique.
Right, right. And that's what you hope for. But then again, there are a ton of writers, a ton of readers who really don't want unique. And there's nothing wrong with that. They want the same old thing, just a little bit different. Um,
Yeah,
and
they
that's
want they don't want the thing that they're reading to ever
that's always
end.
been a standard in Hollywood, right?
Yeah,
And in publishing too. We want a book exactly like this because it was incredibly or exactly like these 20 books because they were incredibly popular, but with enough of a difference, just enough, not too much.
man, I don't know. Maybe that generation's dying out. Maybe that's an older generation thing. My mom is like that, right? She'll go to the library and she'll read all the mystery thrillers. She'll read every single thing with a cop in it or a detective or some kind of
Right.
mystery to solve.
Yeah,
And
it's
is
the
she
same. It's
studying?
the same thriller or courtroom drama over and over
She's
and
not
over again.
studying. She's not studying the writing.
No,
She's not engaged with this thing that she has in front of her.
no.
She's devouring it in 2 or 3
Yeah,
days.
and
She's
those are the kind of and God love those kind of readers, because there are a lot of the power readers who just eat a book a week, if not faster.
I think what
And
we want people who want the Confederacy of Dunces in a speculative format, right? We want somebody to hear of our book and go, huh, that sounds interesting. Let me go find me a copy of that thing and read it. I don't
yeah,
want to be, here's another thriller book, here's another
yeah, I
romance
don't
book,
want to,
here's another fantasy book.
I'm certainly not looking to be known as this literary genius because I'm not. Um,
But you
but
want to be known as a unique storyteller. And being a literary genius means something totally different than that,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because you're not going to be necessarily a literary genius to me is,
yeah,
I mean, you go back all the way to Shakespeare, right? You
right.
go to who wrote Waiting for Godot? That dude, Samuel Beckett. And you go, those are literary geniuses. Yeah, they're both stage performer or stage plays. But I mean, I'm sure you can. Virginia Woolf's a literary genius. Hemingway's a literary genius. But they're not great storytellers, are they?
I don't know. It depends. It
I mean, To
depends
the
on
Lighthouse.
it depends on who you're talking to. You
To
know.
the Lighthouse is a 200-page book about a family going to a lighthouse.
Yeah, and
Right?
you know there are a lot of authors you can talk about, in a lot of different ways. There's the popular. There's a big difference between James Patterson and China Miéville, right? you
Man, I
know
want to read the James Patterson though that he wrote with Bill Clinton.
Yeah, well, I James Patterson's become the McDonald's franchiser
Yeah, totally,
of
right? But
books.
he just did something that hooked me. He wrote a book with Bill Clinton, and it's got a horrible title and everything, and I'll probably look for a copy of it someplace.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great hook, but yeah, you're right. It's candy. You shove it in your mouth and you let it dissolve, and you put another one in there and let it
And I
dissolve
have
too.
no problem with that whatsoever. Actually, I don't have any problem with anybody reading anything they want, or
But the
anybody writing
unfortunate thing,
anything.
though, is I don't think we're producing content fast enough for people to actually devour us in the way they want to devour us.
Yeah,
You know
well,
what I
I'll
mean?
never do that, and I don't care to. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I have no interest
I mean,
in writing
what
that.
does that mean then? I mean, does Mark Lawrence write like that? He writes
No,
many books a year, doesn't he?
no, two or three at the most,
So
and
Red Sister just came out, right?
half of
Red
them he
Sister,
just
and then
yeah, they all come out a year apart. But if he's got a couple different things going with different deals, then he can, do things a little faster. But
and he's the guy that's in charge of the SFBO,
yeah, SPFBO, or
SPFBO.
self-published
Um,
fantasy
yeah,
blog off.
so fast, so fantastic. I talked to a guest the other day who won a pitch contest.
Uh-huh.
You know, she wrote a tweet and it got picked up by a bunch of people, and
Yeah, you see
she's
those
getting
happening.
she got traditionally published. She's got like a six-figure check because of a sentence.
Yeah.
It's so
Well,
crazy. And then,
I'm sure it went beyond that.
well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure they had a better
Yeah, I'm
conversation
sure
than
she
just
had to
that
do
one
a
tweet.
lot more than just that sentence, but that's what got her the attention.
That's a great tweet. Here's a check.
Yeah.
I mean, but I mean, you kind of see that with Jonathan French too. He did the blog off, and boom, right? I mean, he got
Yeah.
a literary agent, and then things took off for him from there. And
Yeah,
it
and he
wasn't even
never,
because he
he never did. He'd be the first to admit he never did a lot of marketing on social media or anything like that.
he's got
Uh,
like 300 Twitter followers.
what's that?
He's got like 300 Twitter followers. I
Oh,
mean,
he
he's
just never
barely
did
doing
it.
some,
Just never did it. He just never
yeah.
did it much, and he and they ended up coming to him. And the same thing, Josiah Bancroft got it out of the SPFBO, even though he didn't make it in the final 10.
But
Um,
that's what happened with Jonathan French too. It wasn't even the fact that he won the thing; it was that he got noticed while he was in the thing.
he
Am I
was in the
wrong?
final 10.
He was.
He
Okay.
was he was a finalist and was scoring very well before he got the offer.
What do
Uh,
you think? What do you think put you in the lead in the contest that you were in third place? I mean, what do you think
I have no
brought
idea.
you?
I did that on a whim. I had been convinced that I had to join Reddit Fantasy.
Oh, okay. I like that subreddit. I've seen you on there.
And yeah, no, I love it.
I've seen your
I
picture. I
love
was like, well, I know that
it.
guy.
Yeah, no, it's a great community. But I was terrified of it early on, and finally I got convinced to do it, and I did it, and I got to do an AMA actually, real
Oh, that's
early
cool.
on. And but anyway, I was poking through there one day, and I saw the interview from the first SBFBO of the top 5 guys, I think, or the
Uh-huh.
top 5 people.
I saw that too.
Um, and I found out when it was starting again, and it happened to be right when I was finishing up Paternus and getting ready to put it out. So I submitted it, and I think I was the 298th or 299th person to submit, like right before the 300 cutoff.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't expect to make it at all, especially, I'm reading they don't like this, they don't like that. All the bloggers put up what they're looking for. And I'm like, oh,
Uh-huh.
well, I'm screwed, but that's okay because so what?
Yeah,
And
you gotta try. You
and
fail, that's fine. You get up,
then I
you try
kept
something
not
else.
getting it cut and not getting cut and not getting cut. And I was just like blown away.
So what happens? That you put your novel into the system? Is it like a submissible type thing, or
No,
what is it? A email?
at that point, I'm not sure how they do it now, but at that point, all you did was email it, at the ebook file to Mark Lawrence.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
And 300 people are included. And then how long does it take while you're
a
watching
year.
yourself not get dropped? It's a year that you're
Yeah,
watching this thing? Oh, wow.
yeah. But
When
that's
does it
what's,
start?
honestly, people, people can say whatever they like, but that's the coolest thing about it. Because the longer it lasts, the longer you're around to get more publicity.
My
Um,
God. So like 10 months in, you're still hanging out with all these other writers going, huh, what's going on? Do you get an opportunity
exactly.
to read?
No, and getting to know the bloggers and then getting to know other people from getting to know them. It's yeah, it's amazing. Just getting in the top 10 is huge because then you're kind of in the public eye for a long time, months and months and months.
And we
Uh,
know that Mr. French's novel is about a orc biker gang.
Basically, yeah, but only
Yeah.
they ride pigs.
They ride pigs. That's
Yeah, they
interesting.
ride giant hogs instead of motorcycles.
Instead of metal hogs.
Yeah,
Um,
so yeah.
are you going to enter number two?
You can only enter first in series or standalones.
Oh, standalones, and it's every year, and you can enter every year if you wanted to.
Yeah, if you've got a standalone or a first in series every year, you can just keep entering. Yeah, and you can enter more than one if you want, or you could the first two of them. That might change. We're in the third now. You could for these three. If it happens again, who knows? Mark might Mark and the bloggers might change the rules a little.
I feel like you guys that have been involved in this contest, this blog off, actually get to know Mark Lawrence a little bit too.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I got lucky enough to, especially if you're a finalist, I got because he knows these bloggers and they're talking to him about the books too, right?
Hmm.
And he's posting and retweeting stuff and keeping track of things, and he gets intrigued, which is how Josiah Bancroft got a lot of the publicity he did because Mark was intrigued, even though it didn't make the final uh, cut or it didn't make the finalists, the top 10. He was so intrigued by the review that he read it and loved it. So he started shouting from the rooftops about it, which is
And
which is awesome.
is Bancroft or Croft a indie still, or
Yeah,
is he gone?
no, no, he's with Orbit.
Oh, he's with Orbit. He got traditionally published. Oh,
Yeah, he got
indie.
a trad pub offered.
That's
Yeah, he got an
fantastic.
agent, um, and he got those books are now published by Orbit. The
I mean,
second one, the first and second one are out. The third one comes out fairly soon, and then there's going to be a fourth. It got picked up as the series. They picked up the series. It's Orbit. Yeah, dude, it's big.
that's interesting.
Yeah, and that
I
came
mean,
out of the
obviously
that came out of the SPFBO as well.
that's so fascinating. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously the fantasy is to make all the money in the world, right? I mean, you want to publish a book, you want to make all the money.
Maybe.
You don't you don't you don't want to share it with anybody. That's
No,
what I think.
I mean, honestly, if all you want to do is make a lot of money, there's no trick to making a lot of money. And that's one of my
Well, I don't
favorite
know.
quotes. It's one of my
There's no
favorite
trick to it.
one of my favorite quotes. One of my
It's
favorite quotes
complete
ever.
bull poo. It's not true.
I
There's a
totally
huge trick to making lots of money. I don't know what it is, but there's a
I
huge
totally
trick
I
to it.
totally believe that. I mean, if you just don't give a shit what you're doing, at all, if you have no interest at all in what kind of work you're doing or what kind of things you can do to make money, there's no trick to making a lot of money.
Well, I guess if you have no scruples and no morals, I mean, definitely you can do
Well,
certain things that might
there
put
are
some
all
money in
kinds
your
of
pocket.
things, and if you get into banking and finance, that's get into banking, finance, and real estate. Go to school for that stuff. Get into that stuff. But God, that kind of thing would kill me. I would hate.
Yeah, honestly. I mean, the people that you have to work with, it's
I
not
would
really the
hate
job. The
to
job is fine.
try to do a
You're working with people who
get
have
into
very little
get into
care.
programming and making computers and apps and stuff, and I'm just
That
no
would be
interest in
fun.
that either.
That would be interesting. I like building things. I like making things happen. But I
It,
think at the end of the day, what we decided to do was be artists and create something and tell a story.
yeah, I
Even you,
like to write books, and if I can make a living doing it, that would be awesome. But that's
yeah.
not the reason and that's if I could get rich at it, that would of course be awesome.
Well, I
But
mean, the
but
question
it's not
is,
my
are you
interest. But
lucky
I'm
or
not
are
going to
you
stop doing it if I don't get rich.
are you lucky if it works out for you, or did you work hard enough, or can you work
It's
hard
both.
enough and get
It's
lucky?
both.
I mean, you
It's got to
definitely
be
won't
both.
get lucky if you're not working hard, and you won't get lucky if you're not working hard. Uh,
Yeah, no, it's got to be both. There are plenty of people who work extremely hard and never get lucky. They never make a lot of money.
well, the question is,
And then there are plenty of people who make a lot of money who suck. It's just the way it is.
you got to gamble, right, to get lucky.
Yeah, and if
What
anybody says that's not true, I don't know what they're smoking.
What do you mean?
If anybody, there are a lot of people who really are not very talented, um, who end up making a lot of money. You know,
Yeah,
but there are a ton of people, but it's got to. But like I said, it's got to be both. You've got to work hard and get lucky. You know what I mean? So a lot of folks that write garbage and make a ton of money, uh,
they're still
they
working hard.
they did both. They're still working hard,
Yeah, they're
right?
still working hard.
They still have to work hard. I mean, writing a book and writing books and keeping with deadlines and all that kind of stuff is not. It's not easy. That's a
Do
lot of
you
work.
know
That's a
BoJack
tremendous
Horseman?
amount of. Even those people that are, those people that are there are people that crank out 6 books a year and they're all pretty good, and then there are
Yeah,
people that crank out 6, 10 books a year and they all suck, but
yeah,
they have something that people want to read. But they're working really hard, so you've got to get lucky again, like we said earlier. It's got to be something people want to read, and there's no way to predict that, so
yeah, man.
it's got to be
It's so
lucky.
it, it's so interesting because you really can't predict it. And you know that show BoJack Horseman on Netflix?
No,
You don't know the show? Okay,
no.
well, it's going to be hard to describe, but basically the show is animated, so it's got all these characters that are half animal, half human type situations. It's horribly drawn. I mean, the art's not good. So you're not going to look at it and go, this needs to win awards just for the art alone. If you saw a portfolio of the art, you'd be like, okay, obviously this is a child's work and they should keep going with their heart and soul and do better in the future. But no, it's an adult and the show makes millions of dollars. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's look on the surface, it looks like crap, but if you get deeper, it's actually a really telling, emotional story about depression.
Huh.
So, I mean, what is crap to one person is obviously a work of art to others.
Well,
It's
yeah,
hard to
no,
be.
absolutely, and there's that kind of craft, right? Where it might be that part of what makes that work is the form, you know, is the form of that kind of artwork. It's hard to say the same when half the words in a book are spelled incorrectly, right?
Yeah, yeah, that
Uh,
would make a bad read altogether.
it's hard to say that that's a conscious choice to make it work. But again, there are a ton of readers who just don't care. Now, all we ever hear about and hear from are the people that do care, right? So
Yeah, the
that's
one, but
why
honestly, I
that's
mean, if you're looking at,
the majority of people who actually take the time to review books
yeah,
do care about that kind of thing. So that's all we hear about. The vast majority of readers, well over 90%, I would guess, don't review books. They just like to read books. And you don't know what they care about and what they don't, other than with sales figures, right?
I mean, in terms of a small publisher versus a big publisher, what really makes me happy about publishing in general is that you do get another voice. You get other people added on to your voice, get to read your story and give you input and make it better and
Well,
stronger and tell you,
that might be the best. That might be the coolest thing. And don't get me wrong. I have nothing against trad publishing uh, or trad authors. Nothing whatsoever. The reason I mean, just because I decided with this book, with this series that I want to go self published, doesn't mean that I never would go traditionally published. It just depends on the deal, And but it would have nothing to do with any sort of esteem. I'm not really interested. And just being able to say, yes, I'm a trad published author, I couldn't care less.
yeah, I mean,
If
exactly.
people don't like
I
the
want
book,
people
I
to read
couldn't
my
care which way.
stories, right? That's ultimately why I write, is to get my stuff under people's eyes. And I mean, when you 2 years ago finished Paternus, am I saying which one's right? Paternus.
Yeah, yeah.
Paternus. Oh God, it's like I had a mini stroke just now. When you finished that book, did you think to yourself, okay, I'm going to hold on to this potentially and try to get it published and then continue to write? Or was
No,
it,
no, I
I'm just
never.
going to, I'm just going
No,
to put this out there?
I actually was never sure I would publish it at all. I just wrote. I wrote that book for years just because I wanted to write it.
So cool. And
And I
that's the
wanted
first
to
thing you've
write
ever
it, and
written.
I wanted to write it the way I wanted to write the story I wanted to read, the way I wanted it to be written. Um,
Yeah.
and you know, a lot of people, even to this day, have problems with the story, the choices, and the style. But that's okay. I didn't write it for, you know, to please other people. Now, of course, I'm human, so I would love people to love what I love, you
Yeah.
know, but that's not why I wrote it. If, you know, I would have made very different choices if all I cared about was trying to meet the market. Um,
What about
but I
artistic?
had no interest. I had no interest in that. I wanted to write a book that I hadn't read, written in a way that I hadn't read written. Um, and I'm going to keep up. I'm going to keep that up with the trilogy. So
So fantastic.
yeah,
I mean, obviously you had a lot of success in Hollywood. Do
I
you
wouldn't say
consider
that.
you had,
I was
okay,
very lucky.
let me rephrase. You
I
had
was lucky,
success
and
in
I got to
Hollywood.
do some really neat
You had a
things.
little, yeah, you got to go do
You
some
know,
cool
no,
stuff.
I never got rich, but I
Well, I
got
mean,
to do
I don't consider money success. I mean, there's a
I
lot of
got to
other,
do a lot of I got to do a lot of fun things.
yeah. Do you,
Going. I just wanted to say, going back to
sure.
indie publishing, one of the coolest things is that, you know, trad publishing, uh, they are there to make money, and that's awesome. But they, you know, they're very much like the Hollywood studios. They need a certain amount of books, a certain amount of the kinds of book, the amount of books they can put out every year to appeal to the broadest possible audience and sell the most they possibly can, right? That's their business model. That's what they have to do. Um, but what happens, as in any situation, is that you get certain kinds of things, and other things are simply turned down right away because they're too risky. So what the neatest thing about indie publishing, even though you get a lot of garbage, just like in indie film, you can get gems and things
Yeah,
that you would
totally.
never, and you can get things that you would never have been able to see from a trad publisher because they would not have wanted to take that risk because
The
it's
Martian
expensive to
being
put a
a
book out.
prime example. The Martian being a
Yeah.
prime example. I
And
mean, not,
what's funny,
not,
what's always been funny to me though is that indie film. When people think indie film, they usually think cool, you know, new, different, groundbreaking, different ideas. But we all know that 99 out of 100 indie films suck, if not more. Um, we just don't see those. But yet there's no stigma attached to indie film. And yet there's still a stigma attached to indie publishing that they all suck, right? But it's exactly the same as indie as in independent film. There are some great books that would never have been seen otherwise. And that's why indie film exists, is because these are films that studios simply would not finance, right? They
yeah.
can't take the risk on smaller markets or the possibility that it won't be a blockbuster.
I mean, I bet you can go back in to any of those successful independent stories, novels, and kind of see how they accumulated, like the snowball effect. What happened when they first got published to cause the success to happen?
Well, and things
Maybe
have
you can
changed too.
duplicate
You
it.
know how Hollywood has gone with the blockbuster mentality, right? You know how films, when you know when we were kids, and not even that long ago, honestly, a film would go out and they would, this it was real terms, they would leave it out for quite a while and hope it would grow legs, right?
Yeah.
Or open in smaller markets and hope word of mouth would spread and it would grow legs. And there are plenty of films that ended up being hugely popular and making a ton of money that even the studios didn't expect to make a lot of money because they did that. Um, but now a movie, even a huge movie, is out for what, 2, 3 weeks, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone.
It's made its
And,
$1 billion and it no
and
longer exists.
unfortunately, that's and if the first in a trilogy doesn't do well, they don't make the other ones.
No, they don't.
I mean, look at Golden Compass, for example. And for a big extent, I know they've made more now, but Vampire Academy or Rick Riordan, Rick Riordan's Lightning Thief, it took forever to make another one after that because the first one didn't do well. Um, I'm pretty sure. I can't guarantee that. I don't have the numbers, and I don't know when a next one came out, but it was not the hit. It was not the Harry Potter they wanted it to be.
No, John Carter from
Golden
Mars. They wanted
Compass,
that
they
to be.
made one. It didn't do well, so they just didn't make any more.
It's
And
unfortunate.
there's nobody in trad publishing can deny that publishing has kind of gone the same way.
Well, I mean,
Um,
ultimately, with movies, you have a
if a
market.
book doesn't do
All
well,
you need is somebody who
if
wants
a
to
book
sit still
doesn't
for
do
two
well, they
hours.
just stop pushing it. They just
Yeah.
stop, and it needs to do well right away.
Mm.
They'll give it more time than film does, but it's not what it used to be. Not what it used to be at all. And and I know authors who did first books in trilogies and then were dropped. They
Yeah,
they you
it
know
happens.
so it's become very much kind of the same mentality. And again, that's fine. That's what they're in business for, and that's what they need to do. But what it does is it really limits what readers get to read and get to see.
Well, that's the other problem, isn't it? That movies, everybody watches movies. All it takes is a passive experience of letting it wash over you.
Hmm.
But to read a book, you've got to dedicate yourself. You've
Yeah,
got to dedicate yourself at least as long as watching a movie just to find out if you like the first chapter, basically.
right.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, the problem in this country and around the world is there aren't a lot of readers. There aren't a lot of readers.
Yeah, I mean,
People stop.
I hear that reading numbers are going way down, and I see
Yeah,
stats, but I still see a whole ton of books getting sold and read.
that's interesting. I don't see any numbers though. I don't see so and so is making this much a year anymore. I mean, I hear
Well,
like
the trads won't announce that kind of stuff. Um,
they used to back in the day, though. They used to tell you this book sold 45 million copies, and Stephen King signed another check for $5 million, 3 books with whoever he signed the contract with.
well, you still
I
see
mean, we
that.
used to hear
You
stuff
can
like
still
that,
find that
brags.
information, Publishers Weekly and other things. You can still see that kind of stuff all over the place. But there are a ton of the people that are making money on the independent side. I mean, nobody knows who they are, and they don't who are they going to report to because there aren't any magazines that want to publish those numbers. And honestly, there are a lot of there's no reason for those authors to publish that stuff. They just
We need
it's
a we need a tiger beat for the independent author world.
a what?
Like a tiger beat, like one of those teenage magazines with the pictures of the movie stars or whatever.
Yeah,
We
well,
need one of those for just
the
authors.
part of the problem with that too is if people find out what kind of money that can be made, then that just means even more of a glut of garbage. That's
That's
just
why I think that's why we've got the problem that we have right now. People
yeah,
like Joanna Penn kind of said, "Hey, you could do it too," and everybody said, "Hey, why not give it a try?" And
yeah.
people who
So
should
you
not
get
have been writing
you get
are
a lot of
writing.
garbage. But
A lot of garbage.
I think readers are getting more savvy. So they look to see what other people are saying about it. They see what
Yeah,
other authors
exactly.
or
I totally
whatever
share that
might be
opinion. You
saying
need
about it.
reviews.
Yeah, they
Reviews
see
are
what
key.
they see what their friends are reading, and it goes from there. But it can happen very quickly.
It can.
They can catch
One
on like
minute you're
wildfire.
nobody, and you get on a flight to South Africa, and you make one horrible comment on Twitter, and the next minute you're getting off the plane without a job. I mean, the world that we live in, you
Yep.
never know. I mean, there was a person who was trying to start some kind of gaming website. He was doing okay, a couple tens of thousands of followers. He made one comment bad on Twitter, all gone. He made one stupid joke, based on, one of the, what do they call them on the sides, the hot words of the day or whatever. Didn't
Ah,
know what the story was. Turned out it was the London terrorist attack. And it's like, oh, you're never gonna be publishing anything again.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, it works both ways, bad and good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what is your marketing plan when the book actually releases?
Um, well, I sort of actually have one, but it's pretty small. A lot of it is limited strictly by time and money. But I'm going basically, it will be announced um, on some blogs when it finally comes out. It's already the release and the the book cover have already been put on a blog and shared around. It's up for pre-order on Amazon already, so anybody who sees Paternus will see the second book. The second book will actually go to $1. There will be a sale for 7 days right around the release of book two. The first book will be put on sale around the release of book two. And other than that, not a whole lot, to be honest.
Just write the next one. Are you going to do a third one as well?
Luckily, this time I have actually people who want to get an ARC, you know,
Yeah.
advanced release copies. When I put the first book out, there was no such thing. It just didn't exist. Um, but because I was lucky enough, mostly with the SPFBO, to get to know a lot of folks, and then from there, gather some readers that like it, that and bloggers that like it, that I do have quite a few folks to send ARCs out to. So, it will hopefully not take me a year to get 25 reviews on Amazon this time. Uh, so yeah, but that's about all I can do at this point. Luckily my web, before I had to build the website, I had to build the whole infrastructure. But a lot of that is done now. There will be
Yeah.
some tweaking. I will be taking a couple of months, right around when it comes out and after, to just update all that kind of stuff. Um, without any writing, because I only have so much time during the day. But
Mhm.
then I'll get on book three, and that'll be out next summer in
Oh, wow, quick turnaround. I have no.
2019. Yeah, this one will come around. This one will be turned around. This will just be a year later.
Have you already started the writing on the third one yet?
Depends on what you mean by the writing.
You've
Um,
been tinkering with it in your head, basically.
oh no, I've got hundreds of pages of notes
Oh, good.
and tables and outlines that have been put together for book one and then tweaked and added to throughout book two. And a lot of what I did before I started actually writing the second book was laying out all of book two and three. So I've been working on, for a long time, I worked on both books at the same time, um, to get the story arc out all the way through. I had always known, but as you go along, you can see how much and how much you can't fit in each book. So um, a lot of it is a lot of the ground, all of the groundwork is laid for book three. So now it's
Do
just
you
sort of,
want to spoil? Do you want to spoil book three now for my
what do you mean?
listeners? Just tell us what the ending is going to
Sure.
be. Man,
Everybody lives and gets married
no,
and
we're
lives.
supposed to
Everybody
die.
lives, gets married,
Oh, okay.
has
Has a kid.
children, and
Oh, it's a nightmare. Don't do that
happily
to
ever
anybody.
after.
That's if they're having kids, it's not a happily ever after. I'm sorry. As a father of two toddlers, that's not true. I love my kids. All
I'll
right,
bet
man. I
anybody who's read the first book won't believe that. What I
I
just said.
haven't read the first book. I have read the sample that is available on Amazon. I think you have a really concise writing style. I think it's interesting.
Oh, thank you.
Your character is immediately gripping.
Well, thanks.
Um, so man, episode number 100 and episode number one. You're doing very good on origin stories on creativity. You're like our star. So, so we're
I,
hoping
I
that you
can.
do.
It's a great honor to be your number one and number 100. I love it.
Gonna have to hit you up next year for 200 when your next book comes out. So
Absolutely.
just we'll nail that date down now. Um, and I like to finish up this podcast now. I don't know if I did this when I first spoke with you, by asking three final questions.
Sure.
And the first one is basically, you do have a great attitude. Um, how to accomplish
I just like
tasks.
to have fun.
And I was going to ask you, what would you tell people who don't have a great attitude? How can you have a better attitude?
Uh, I'm not
Nice.
a kid. I'm not a kid anymore. So, I'm in my 50s. So I
Very
went
old.
through plenty of that angst-ridden bad attitude um, time framing. A lot of it is you feel either entitled or how come it hasn't happened to me? You just get a much more realistic attitude as you get older. And I never, like I said, I wrote this book because I wanted to write it for years. For years, I literally wrote it because I wanted to write it without any thought for publishing before I started researching whether I wanted to do trad or self-pub and thinking seriously about that. I had written it for years. So what I do is I just try to remind myself if I get caught up in trying to please others that I'm still just writing for me.
Yeah.
And that might sound real selfish and not cool, but of course I care what people think, but I'm not gonna. And if somebody has ideas that I think are good and I like and I could put in and still like the book and maybe it'll be more accepted, then I'll do it. But if it's not something I'm actually either interested in writing, or think it's just different, or think it's just trying to make it more popular, but I don't really like it, then I just won't do it, because
Yeah.
I don't have to. So I just have to remind myself I'm doing this because I love doing it. And that keeps me pretty happy.
Do what you
Good or
like
bad with fun.
and be happy because of the results.
Yeah.
I like it. And my second question would be, what are you reading right now? What's on your Kindle? What's on your night table? What would you
Um,
recommend for
you know
people to
what?
pick up and enjoy?
I just finished up the most recent things I read were God Blind, um, which I loved, and by Anna Stevens. And I read Age of Assassins by R.J. Barker, which I loved. And what else did I read? I think the latest thing that I just finished, so I'm still not on anything else right now because of the tight deadline for writing. Um, what was it? Boy, you asked me too quick. It was good
It's
Lord.
okay. I asked the question. I have no clue what I'm reading at all right now either.
Oh, okay.
Reddit, does that count? Is Reddit an actual book?
What's that?
Is Reddit an actual book? Can I count that as what I'm reading right now?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I haven't decided. I go back and forth between self-pub and traditional all the time because I like them both. And I've met so many authors now that I want to read their stuff. But I'm really slow. I only get through about 12 to 15 books a year
Mm.
because I'm a slow reader, even though I read every single day. Um, but it's yeah, it can be it's kind of hard. I have an enormous TBR, an enormous TBR.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Every time I hear of a good book, I immediately try to find it. My last question for you would be, how do we find you on the World Wide Web? Where do you recommend people go first? Where's the best place to find out about
Well, the
Dyrk
more
Ashton?
Twitter is always a lot of fun. Undyrk, UNDYRK is my username on Twitter. Take that however you want. UN as username Dirk or not Dirk, Undyrk, opposite Dirk. Um, I'm on Facebook.
I like to look at it as you've been dirked and then you get undirked.
There's that too. Exactly. I hadn't thought of it that way. And I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram. Um, my website is Paternus Books Media, paternusbooks.com, which has my bio and a lot of other info about me and the books and such. There's a trailer there, and some the the books, I had some anthologies that I had some stories in, which are in the world of Paternus. Lost Lore is one of them, and Art of War is the other.
These are all short fiction collections.
Those are, yeah, short fiction collections. Lost Lore is like 12 or 15 short stories for free on Amazon. And there's a story from the Paternus world in their backstory. And then Art of War is the anthology for charity with a bunch of big name authors in it, like Mark Lawrence. Um, and there are like 40 stories, short stories in there. And I was lucky enough to be in there. Petros Triantafloi, Triantaflou, sorry, Petros, from Book Nest put that together. And it's amazing. So much good stuff in there. And mine is in
And
there.
yours.
And
I
yours.
love the humility. I just,
Yeah.
that's a
And
great way to end this thing, with
it's
humility.
also a backstory. Takes place during a battle with a Valkyrie as the lead.
Did you get mad Thor Ragnarok when they used the Valkyrie in the movie?
Oh no, you just can't. Anybody who's writing is going to see stuff that has stuff from yours, and and Valkyries, and mythology has been used so much that there's nothing. I'm doing nothing new. It's when it
Yeah.
comes to when it
I'm
comes
writing
to
a I'm writing a
incorporating when it comes to incorporating a lightning spear and a Valkyrie, or a Greek, Norse, whatever.
mhm.
I mean,
Yeah,
I mean the only thing I've got a lot of gods in mind that are generally not touched on from pantheons, that aren't touched on in a lot of books. But
I'm
other
writing
than
a,
that,
novella on Greek mythology right now. Not on, but with Greek mythology. So I mean, yeah, people do it. It's
oh, it's
impossible to
tons. I mean, they have their own. It had Greek and Roman has its own category in Amazon.
Oh, does
Fiction
it?
based, yeah, fiction based on Greek and Roman under fantasy, and same with Norse. So they have their own categories. Fairy tale,
Now I just fantasize
fairy
about
tales has its
collecting
own
short fiction.
category, and it's not the myths; it's books based on that stuff, like mine.
Yeah. Well,
It's
hey, Derek, and this was an amazing conversation. And again, thank you so much for being my 100th. I tried to get you on to be my 50th too, but you were too busy writing the next book in your
Oh, that's
series.
right. That's right. Thanks for asking. No, I forgot about that.
But you have an open invitation anytime you want. Come back on, talk about whatever you're working on, or I have another podcast too that I've been working on as well. It's about 30 or 40 episodes right now,
Oh, wow.
where I talk about specific topics in speculative fiction.
Oh,
So
cool.
like I would invite you on and you would say, let's do Mark Lawrence, and we would do an hour on Mark Lawrence's career, where he came from, what's he writing,
Right.
how did he become
I would
successful.
actually have to read a lot more of Mark's work.
Well, I'd like to do him eventually one day. I've never even read one of his books. I tried to read Red Sister. I have to come at novels many times to actually get hooked. I want that feeling. It's like a
Yes.
heroin addict. I want that, whatever the hell they get, because I've never done heroin. But I mean, there's something that when I read a good book, I just sink into it and I just cannot put it
Yeah,
down.
you
And I
get that
want
you
that.
get that endorphin rush like a runner.
Yeah, I'll read like thousands of books a year just to find like 10 that do that for me.
Well, right, and a lot of books, I mean, it's for me, it's just a fact. There is not a book, even my very favorite books, that doesn't have something I don't like, right?
Right. Well, I
But
mean, that's
there have also been a ton of books that I may have wanted to quit on, but I'll find a few chapters or a certain thing that I find absolutely amazing, that blow me away, and it's worth the whole read just for that, for me. Um, yeah,
it's very
people
sad.
talk about the perfect book. I don't believe there is such a
Well, I
thing.
don't think there's a perfect
I don't
engagement
think
with a
there
book,
is
though.
such a thing. And
There's a perfect your moment with that book that I look for.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
Patrick Rufus, I think
yeah,
that's his name. Name of the Wind. I
Yeah,
could not read that book to save my life until one day I picked it up, and that was it. I read both those books in like a week.
right,
You know, I mean, that's my opinion right now. The reader does all of the work when it comes to enjoying a novel. The writer can just provide the words, hopefully in the right order with a limited number of mistakes. But it's really all about that reader sinking their teeth into it, enjoying it enough to finish it, and then
right,
coming back and looking for more.
right. And I'm one of those authors that really tries to trust the reader. Um,
Yeah.
I know there's
I
a
mean,
lot say that you have to. Some say trust your reader. Some say, well, to a certain extent, you got to spoon feed them. But I'm also one of those readers that tries to really trust the author. If there's something that I don't think is working or I'm questioning, I try to trust that it will work itself out,
yeah.
that they have something in mind. And that's why they're
That's
doing
the other
this.
problem that that's the other problem that I have with independent published authors is that nobody has vetted them. So when I start an independent story, I think to myself, okay, how far into this thing am I going to go before they drop the ball on me?
Right.
And I've
Well,
wasted, I just,
honestly, when people say nobody has vetted, that's not true anymore. The serious self pubs always have beta readers and authors, right? And by
but no
vetted
gatekeepers,
or
no
what's that?
gatekeepers. Nobody's going to say, John Smith, no, take that book off Amazon right now. It has no quality to be on there.
Well, they
Nobody's doing
can.
that.
I
So John
mean,
Smith,
readers can do it, and they don't have an editor that can say no. Um,
and that goes back to your
they
statement
can
about
they can still put it out,
reviews.
but again, we run into that catch 22, right?
No
Where
reviews, no
editors
readers.
editors might be saying no for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I mean, it
Um,
could catch. It could catch. I mean, we all know J.K. Rowling.
you just never know. But I know that there aren't very many indie authors who are writing good stuff who don't have hired good editors. Um, and then it's up to them whether they're going to change it or not.
I mean,
But
the way that you're doing it, the model that you're doing, kind of the slow burn,
yeah,
the slow bubble. People do it. I mean, I've talked to independents that have done this, and as they're going through their series, they're collecting hundreds and hundreds of people. And by the time
yeah,
they're
it
done
can
with
take
it,
a
they've
long
got a
time.
fandom.
And again, I've been really lucky because the vast majority of people who put out one book and just have one book out never get anywhere.
Yeah.
And
Until the second one comes out. I mean, but I think
and even the
ultimately, I mean,
second,
in my
third,
opinion, it matters
sometimes can take
nothing.
even longer. But that's true in trad pub too. Sometimes, the first book will sell okay, so they still get to do the second and the third in the trilogy. But for the most part, there are a ton of readers who never ever heard of the Hunger Games until it was all done, till all three
Yeah,
were out.
I didn't know what the
I
movie. I
mean,
didn't know it until the movie
yeah,
came
they
out.
had a following, sure, but it wasn't Harry Potter by the time the third one came out.
And
Um,
that author had gone from a non-successful series to the Hunger Games series with like nothing in between. I mean, you could write lots of different novels and have the 20th one catch, and
Yeah,
that's what you're
yeah,
famous
and
for.
you never know, and you never know what's really gonna catch on. And I don't know the actual numbers. I don't know how many it was selling of book one, then book two, and then how many fans it had gathered by book three. But I do know a lot of people had never heard of it who liked that kind of stuff that I was talking to who had never heard of it until all three of them were out.
Well, that's also another case where that author banked too. She got some checks for those books, and she got a check for the movies as well. And now she doesn't have
Well,
to
the
write
movie,
anymore,
I
and
don't
nor
know.
is she.
I have no idea how much she might have gotten for the books. It's never as much as you think, unless you're a big, big author. Um, but yeah, oh yeah, the movies made all the
Movie set
difference.
her up. I
Yeah,
think she's living in upstate New York right now. She's got seven figures. She's taking care of an actor husband who doesn't have to act anymore. So I mean, she's
yeah.
what is it? Charlene Harris, I think. Is that who
No,
it is?
no.
No,
Charlene
somebody
Harris
else.
wrote True Blood, or
Oh,
the Sookie Stackhouse novels.
oh, okay. Who wrote the? I did an episode of her
Suzanne
too.
Collins.
Suzanne Collins. That's who it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, man, that would be a great podcast. I'd love to have you on for it. Just to, geek out about an author or whatnot.
That'd be fun.
I'll hit you up in a few months if you're any interest in doing that. But otherwise, thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your Thursday.
It is Thursday.
Wow.
Thank you for reminding me, actually. Thanks, Bryan. It's been an honor.